Before we dive into the real story of Ka-Bar knives in World War II, make sure to subscribe to Strange History. Hitting that button ensures you don't miss the untold stories, battlefield secrets, and, those shocking truths that mainstream history often ignores. Share this with anyone who thinks they know World War II, because the Army's battle against one of the most iconic knives ever made is a story very few people know. The Ka-Bar knife is a legend. It's etched into the lore of the United States Marine Corps and the broader military community. Soldiers carried it from the Pacific jungles to the snowy hills of Europe. Yet the tool that would become synonymous with wartime survival almost never made it to the front lines. The Army didn't just hesitate, it actively resisted widespread distribution. Understanding why requires us to dig into the battlefield realities, politics, and, honestly, the institutional fears of the time. Why the Ka-Bar was created in the first place. Before World War II, trench warfare and limited combat experience had shaped military knives primarily as bayonet attachments or ceremonial weapons. Soldiers found that short, light knives were largely ineffective for survival tasks beyond combat. Enter Union Cutlery's Ka-Bar, a 7-inch blade, robust, full-tang steel, and capable of performing everything from cutting rope to opening cans, or even splitting small logs. In practical terms, it was a utility tool that doubled as a combat weapon. The Marines in particular embraced the Ka-Bar not because it looked intimidating, but because it worked. Jungle survival, constructing shelters, hunting, and even field hygiene were all facilitated by a tool that was versatile, strong, and reliable. Troops quickly noticed that carrying one could make the difference between enduring a night in the wild or facing injury, infection, or worse. Here's where the story gets controversial. Official military doctrine resisted the Ka-Bar for multiple reasons, some tactical, others bureaucratic. The Army feared that giving soldiers a knife designed for close combat might encourage unauthorized aggression or unsafe behavior. There was a perception that soldiers would rely on knives in ways that conflicted with discipline or hierarchy. Additionally, logistics played a role. Issuing a standardized weapon was easier than managing multiple types of knives. A soldier carrying a Ka-Bar was also a soldier with a potentially lethal tool outside regulated combat zones. Commanders feared accidents, misuse, or incidents that could create liability for the military bureaucracy. Despite resistance from higher-ups, soldiers actually carried Ka-Bars in secret, or, procured them through unofficial channels. Once they were out in the field, the knife proved absolutely indispensable. In the dense jungles of Guadalcanal or the snow-choked ridges of the Aleutians, soldiers discovered that survival often depended more on utility tools than rifles. The Ka-Bar's blade allowed troops to, construct makeshift shelters, prepare food, and defend themselves when no other options existed. Field reports soon reached higher command units with Ka-Bars were honestly healthier, more efficient, and often more effective in skirmishes. The knife wasn't just a weapon, it was a life-saving survival tool. Stories from veterans described the Ka-Bar being used to cut entangled barbed wire, open ration cans, or even administer emergency first aid. After repeated frontline advocacy, the Army reluctantly incorporated Ka-Bars into official issue, though not without caveats. Manuals included warnings on proper use, storage, and the dangers of unsanctioned combat use. Essentially, the Army tried to control the narrative. The Ka-Bar could save lives, but only if soldiers followed orders. This tension between practicality and bureaucracy really highlights a broader truth about military innovation. Survival often outpaces regulation. Soldiers on the ground, well, they respond to immediate needs, while commanders are more concerned with things like liability, uniformity, and control. The K-bar is, honestly, a perfect example of this dynamic. But the story doesn't end with grudging acceptance. K-bars actually became a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability. Marines and soldiers took pride in the knife, not just for combat, but for its everyday survival utility as well. Over time, the K-bar became synonymous with World War II survival, a tangible reminder that tools and the knowledge to use them were every bit as crucial as bullets and rations. Even today, the K-bar remains one of the most iconic survival and combat knives in history. Collectors and historians study its design, weight, and materials to understand why a piece of steel and wood became essential equipment. The lessons are, honestly, timeless. Versatility, durability, and field-tested effectiveness outweigh bureaucratic hesitation or abstract fears. K-bar's story isn't just about knives. It's about how real-world experience reshapes doctrine, how frontline innovation can challenge authority, and how survival depends on practical tools and knowledge rather than idealized plans. For modern survivalists, it's a reminder that gear matters, but, understanding the principles behind its use matters more. Choosing the right tool for multiple purposes, learning how to maintain it, and knowing when and how to rely on it can make the difference between life and death, both in historical contexts and today's extreme survival scenarios. K-bar wasn't just a knife, it was a survival philosophy forged under fire. If you want more stories of forgotten World War II tools, battlefield secrets, and survival strategies that armies didn't want you to know, make sure to subscribe to Strange History. Hit the notification bell because every week we uncover the lost lessons, hidden tactics, and controversial truths that history books often ignore. Share this video with friends and fellow history enthusiasts who are ready to see the weapons, tools, and survival techniques that truly shaped World War II.